Welcome to the Formative Assessment Toolbox Monday. Want to share with you this book that I've been reading, Formative Assessment, Responding to Your Students. Formative assessment, I'm going to say that a lot. It is critical to us making a difference in our students and whether they are learning or not, and learning at the rate that they should be learning. I'm going to go over a few things, and then we're going to apply those during our Toolbox Monday. First of all, formative assessment, if you look at my chart, is part of the regular classroom learning. That's why map testing, while it is a good tool to use, it is not the only way to formative assess your students, because formative assessment should be part of your regular classroom learning. It should be embedded in your class learning. It's intended to improve and accelerate student learning. Students learn in 6 to 7 months what they would normally learn in a school year when you are applying formative assessment on a regular basis, and works extremely well with at-risk students. Those students who fall between the cracks or in that gray area, formative assessment and the things that I'm going to share with you today and over the next couple of sessions will really make a difference in those students who seem to just not get what you're teaching. So hopefully some of the things I'm going to share with you today you can take away and apply the following day in your classroom. Some strategies that apply with formative assessment. We think of formative assessment, we think of only testing, but there are lots of different ways that we can formative assess and get a good end result. We begin with pre-assessing. You should always test your students to find out what they know. When you're beginning a math unit or a science unit or something, you're going to pre-assess them. And then you find out there may be some things that they know that you don't even need to teach. So why use your time like that? Go ahead and pre-assess them and find out where they are. Once you find out where they are, you need to be sharing the goals with them. And when I mean that, talk about the standards. Make sure that they understand what it is that you're asking them to learn. If you go into the classroom and you say, open up your math book to page 45, let's look at problem 1, you've not told them what they're going to be doing. So you need to share the learning goal. Today we're going to be learning how to add 2 numbers, 2-digit numbers with regrouping. And talk about what does regrouping mean? What does 2-digit mean? And share that. And in the same way that you're going to share that, you're also going to make it some language that they're familiar with, that is understanding to them. So if regrouping, you use that term, but you help them understand it by saying carrying over or traveling or going to your next door neighbor, whatever terms that help them understand the concept. But you have to have a conversation about it. You have to really make sure that they understand these standards. Well, it seems like that takes a lot of time. If you do that ahead of time, then that's why students can learn 6 to 7 months what it would take them a year to learn normally. When you're talking about formative assessment, there should be a healthy discussion and discourse about the standards so that they do comprehend them, they do understand them. Quality, not just you're going to learn this because I said so, and because it's a standard and because it's on the test. Help them truly understand what it is that you want them to learn and at what level. There should be rich and challenging tasks. You're not going to give them a workbook page every day. You're going to give them a project, maybe a checklist. You're going to work them in groups, pairs, those kinds of things. All those things are ways that you can find out, do they get it or don't they? Formative assessment does not mean you have to have a formal paper pencil evaluation. You're going to provide students with feedback so that they can identify how they can improve. When we turn a test back to a student and it's just marked wrong and we don't explain anything to them, they don't know what they can do better. So the feedback needs to be beneficial to them. When you return a paper, maybe a writing example, and you've marked some things wrong, you need to explain to them why you've marked the things, that they're missing a lot of punctuation, so let's go back and look at that particular thing. Or if it's a math problem and they've missed something and there's like one step that they're missing, if you don't explain that, giving them feedback, they're not going to understand why they got it wrong. If you just say, do that again, do it over, well, they thought they did it right the first time. You've got to explain to them what they did wrong so that they don't repeat that error. You can do self and peer assessments. It's a little time consuming, but you're not grading anything. You're doing checklists, you're doing rubrics, and you want to celebrate learning progression. Not everybody's going to progress at the same rate. You're going to have some that are still at the beginning. You're going to have some that are progressing. You're going to have some that are proficient, and you're absolutely going to have some that are advanced. But if those kids who weren't even at the beginning are at the beginning now, you're going to celebrate that. You need to acknowledge in them that they are making progress. Some things that I want to share with you concerning the strategies are changing the way you do your daily agenda. If you write on the board, here are the things we're going to do, here are the standards, you're going to want to be specific. So instead of saying, all right, in science, we're going to complete our journal by defining the definitions, or, completing the definitions. Instead, you might say, and this is a third grade standard, and I've reworded it thinking maybe this might help the students understand a little bit better. Classify liquids, gases, and solids using traits that are seen and measured. So they're going to, maybe they have to define the liquids, gases, and solids. Maybe they have to list what those are. But this does not tell them what they're going to be doing. This tells them, well, what they're going to be learning, actually. This tells them what they're going to do. This tells them what they're learning. And that is very important with formative assessment. You can't assess somebody on something they don't even know what you're talking about. You've got to make sure they understand. So you're going to begin with the standard. You're going to end with the standard. When they come in, today we're going to classify liquids, solids, and gases. And we're going to use their traits that we can see with our eyes and we can measure with different tools to understand what those forms of matter are. Then, in part of the self-assessment, peer assessment, or even checklists or rubrics, you're going to help them understand what is each level of learning that they've gotten in that particular standard. So for example, if we take this same standard here, if I were to share with my students, you're at the beginning if you can identify the matter. If they can identify solids, liquids, gases, and they know that those are forms of matter, okay, they're at the beginning. Then if you want to progress and you tell them this is how you're going to progress, it's not enough to know the forms of matter. Now you've got to identify and list matter and their traits. So now okay, I know what matter is, solids, liquids, gas, but what is a solid, what is a liquid, what is a gas, and give me some traits. Then if they want to be proficient, they're going to explain that matter can be seen and measured by their traits. And you're going to talk about what do you see. They'll be able to explain to you, what do you see in liquid, gas, and solids? How can you measure liquids, gases, and solids? And then if you want them to be advanced, which is where we all are trying to reach our students, they're going to be able to explain states of matter. They're going to be able to detail the traits and describe the what, the why, and go into, and then apply it. So if you give them a form of matter, they'll be able to tell you what it is, how do they know that, why do they know that, and that's showing them what's their quality of learning. It's not enough to be always at the beginning. And this is part of that depth of knowledge and Bloom's taxonomy. This is the basic, and this is not enough. They need to be able to move on to the more specific, the more in-depth, with the depth of knowledge and the higher order thinking. And you do this by communicating to them what the standards are, what your expectation is. Some other things that you need to do when you're talking about standards and formative assessment is when you assign a project, if you have a checklist or a rubric that you're going to be using, you need to go over that with them. Give them an example of an exemplar project. So if you have students either creating an animal cell or a plant cell, have a cell project from another student from another year that is exemplar, and have the students see exactly what you're looking for. And then have a random assortment of projects, give the students the rubric, and have them assess projects, just so that they can get familiar with when they get ready to do their project, they're going to know what you expect of them. Rather than you just handing them that rubric, they can't see in their mind what you're looking for. You know in your mind what you set as that example. They need to see it. So show them projects. Give them examples of projects. Give them an opportunity to reword and rethink the checklist or the rubric so it makes sense to them. Because it is about them reaching that level of proficiency and advanced by showing you that they know what they're doing. So today, when you're in your Toolbox Monday groups, which is going to be your grade levels or your teams, we're going to be talking about what is formative assessment. You're going to be looking at how you can take your standards and post them so that they're in friendly terms, how that you're going to be using the standards. That's your language in your classroom with your students, yourself, and taking some of these little tips and turning your classroom around to begin the process of formative assessment, embedding it in your classroom, making it part of your everyday instruction. Formative assessment.